Welcome to Miami, a city of vibrant contrast where each neighborhood tells its own story. I'm Will, a born and raised local and your trusted guide to the real estate landscape. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, local legend, or a seasoned investor, I've helped clients navigate every challenge this market can throw, from competitive bids to complex inspections. Let's get started. First up, Tiffany. She wanted a house with space for her rescue dogs. What she got? 12 offers, bidding wars, but at the end, she got her perfect home. Then there's Eddie, commercial real estate pro turned humble home hunter. He thought it'd be easy until the house hunt hit year 3. Meet Arthur and Tatiana. They were just looking to rent, until one open house later, they're putting an offer on a house with zero chill. And finally, Eric. Cool under pressure, until the mold inspector showed up. Let's just say we went from walkthrough to walkaway. Almost.
So I thought home buying was going to be easy before because I come from a commercial real estate background myself, and just doing these larger deals, I thought on a smaller scale it'd be a little bit simpler, easier, more smooth process, and what I found out was it's a lot more difficult than I would have thought.
Managing expectations is super important, and I always do that from the very beginning. I immediately make sure to hop on a phone call if I can with the clients, and I tell them, look, this is how the process is gonna go. We're gonna do an inspection, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. It's probably not gonna go right because nothing ever goes 100% right, but we're gonna figure out a solution and we're gonna take it one step at a time. And there's no issue that we can't resolve. And if there is an issue that we can't resolve, then we move on to another deal and that's it, and we call it a day.
Getting in there early and getting somebody that's an expert in there early, I feel like is key for the entire process, just because there's so many different things that I just didn't think of that you kind of need an expert to kind of tell you how to run and do things. And there's several steps in a process where I maybe only thought of 2 or 3 and there's like 20. So and that's without dealing with the actual other side of things and the person on the other side, which can also be complicated. So having an expert in there early, I think, is huge.
I didn't think it was going to be easy. I think what we underestimated was how emotional it could be. I think both on our side and then on the other side too, and mediating that whole process, which Will did an incredible job with. That was particularly stressful. And then the actual diligencing of the house. You walk into a place, it's great, it's beautiful, you can see kind of the next 5, 10, 15 years in there. And for us, there was some complications. In Miami specifically, houses are built in the 1920s and things build up, and you have to kind of understand what you're stepping into. And having someone who's clearly been from the area and explained everything to us, I think the number of times you asked about when was their plumbing done was a very clear indication to us that he was clearly the expert we needed, and that definitely made it a lot easier. Definitely wasn't easy, but I can't even imagine the process without Will.
I did expect it to be easy, mostly because it was in 2021. Interest rates were at an all-time low, demand an all-time high. So we were being outbid left and right. It took a lot of patience, a lot of offers, a lot of visiting different homes. In fact, we were in contract with a house that turned out to be nowhere near what we thought it would appraise for. And so we did end up getting lucky not closing on that house and finding the one that we did. But it did take a while because of where the market was at the time. But eventually we closed on a fantastic house that's really central to Brickell. And Will got very creative with the negotiation, to say the least. It involved F1 tickets, yes. So it did take a long time, but it was well worth the wait.
I think I kind of retract my statement that it wasn't easy. I thought it'd be easy when you actually found a property and you're under contract and you go through that whole process, but actually finding the property was, I feel like, the harder part on the front end. That process, I think I reached out to Will maybe 2 or 3 years before I bought my house, and really when we found a house that just got listed in the market, he basically told me, look, this is a very well priced property in comparison to the rest of the neighborhood. It was could be appraised higher than what the comps are in the area, but I think it's a great deal. I decided to go pull the trigger, I think almost the next day. So finding the right opportunity definitely took time, but I feel like it was well worth it with patiently waiting for the right opportunity. And Will was great with all the research back up and making that decision. I definitely did feel a little bit humbled. At least on the front end, I thought it'd be a little bit difficult, but actually going through the process itself was definitely a bunch of other steps that I didn't really think of. So yeah, coming to the end of it, it was definitely a humbling experience for sure. And I mean, I feel like there's nobody better than Will that really, held my hand along the way and really taught me something that I thought I did know, but obviously didn't. So I was, working in like the financial numbers of certain projects, not really getting into the weeds of like the mechanical systems or plumbing systems that they've mentioned so far. And when going and touring the house, you can only see like what the eye can see, right? So he had a couple different consultants that we used to go in there, do inspection reports of everything, basically pinpointed what specific area we needed to go back to the seller on and maybe get concessions on. That I wouldn't necessarily have thought of. Obviously, we do our own due diligence on the larger commercial side of things, but on the residential side, it's a little bit different. So I think just having him, who's a residential expert, it's never going to be comparable to a commercial, right? Because it's two different things. Real estate is so large. You have the commercial, retail, industrial. I mean, there's residential and commercial, and having somebody that's an expert in that particular space was, I think, key.
I've had a few with Will. The first time around, it was a breeze, and the seller gave us everything we asked for. We thought this was awesome. There were some lessons learned in that, right? There were some red flags there that we picked up on, and the second time around, I felt, although there were some things that came up throughout the process, especially with the seller and the house, that had to be fixed or whatever it was, we navigated it perfectly. Like, we completely threaded the needle, and I couldn't be more happy. I've been looking since I left. As soon as I left, I wanted to come back. This was 2001. It's now 2025, so that's how long it took me. When I first met Will, the guy shows up in like a hoodie and some hoochie daddy shorts. It was amazing. I was like, obviously this is the right guy for me. But I had no idea what I was getting into or what I wanted, right? And so he kind of like, it was like a tour guide, like telling me, hey, you know, this is an area where you want to play in. This is an area where you want to live. This is an area where you want to avoid. And so I needed that. I was coming from Chicago, and I didn't know anything about Miami or the local market.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I guess I am kind of like a tour guide. I love being able to help out-of-town people. Being able to help people experience like a certain bar, a certain new group of friends, or a certain restaurant for the first time, or even like the ocean, the sand. It's like the coolest experience ever, because it gives you that energy of like having that first time experience of seeing something in Miami for the first time again. Eric was like super cool client when I met him for the first time. I knew we were gonna gel super well together, and it is true. I do wear short shorts everywhere I go, but it's also very hot in Miami.
My first impression of Will, I think it was somewhat similar, probably at a high school party though. Where I met him. He was always the kind of the life of the party. He knew a bunch of people, which was great. He was always very well connected, and he was just very personable, right? Like he could talk to pretty much everyone, and just knowing him and traveling with him pretty much all across the domestically and actually internationally as well has been something great.
So we actually were connected with Will through my sister. So she's a real estate agent in Newport Beach, California. And so I said, hey girl, can you help us find a house? She goes, no, I don't live in Florida, but I can find someone. And so then like through one person, through another, Will called me, and we weren't even looking to buy at the beginning. We were just looking to put feelers out for maybe what other neighborhood we'd want to rent a townhouse or something. And so I gave this man so much information, and he goes, okay, yeah, well, let me look around. And he sends us, before we even met him in person, he sends us detailed emails and text messages just connecting with us and giving us kind of clarity on where we might want to be and what to look for. So first impression was great. Arthur's been living in Brickell for about 3.5 years, and then I moved out here a year ago. And so we lived in Brickell together for about a year, and then definitely thought about just expanding out of a high rise.
It's Brickell though, it's a bubble. You never really leave it and you never really know the outside areas. I mean, maybe go to the beach once or twice, but I mean, the Gables was like a taboo thing. It was like, you've got to have kids, you've got to have a family, and you're like, oh, you're gonna move out there, you're never gonna see anyone. And he was like, listen, that's entirely wrong.
I think you genuinely need someone who is local at a certain point, and I'm super happy that I was able to help them and introduce them to all the different neighborhoods that Miami has to offer because, for instance, Eric started in Miami Beach, and now he's in Coral Gables. Tatiana and Arthur started in Brickell, now they're in Coral Gables. Tiffany started all the way in San Francisco, and then she ended up in the Little Havana area of Miami. And then Eddie, of course, he ended up in Littleham area, which is close to Bird Road, and now he's in Pinecrest. So I'm very well versed with every neighborhood in Miami, and I couldn't be happier to have so many different clients who are willing to live all around the different neighborhoods of Miami. You need someone who's local, who's very hooked up and well connected with vendors. It might even be like restaurant people, service industry people. You want to help your clients out not only in the home buying process, you want to help them get a dinner reservation if they need one. So you want someone who's local, understands all these neighborhoods. People want to be by all the restaurants, clubs, bars. Even if it's not clubs, restaurants, and bars, all the gyms, all the wellness centers, all the spas, all of these things that help you grow and really kind of become a member of Miami.
But I don't think we would have had the courage to move out to the Gables unless Will had given us the download.
We'll push.
Yeah.
We had no idea. Basically told Will, like, we don't know if we want to buy, we don't know if we want to rent kind of thing. And so through Will, we got this like compass portal. And we didn't know if we wanted to be in Coconut Grove, in Shenandoah, in Brickell, in Miami Beach. We had no idea. So like our search was super broad. And then one day I said, Arthur, what if we just looked on the buy side? And so I switched it over to the buy side, and I went a little bit crazy on tour requests on all these houses that I had liked. And Will texted me like 2 hours later and he goes, so you want to tour some houses now? Are we looking to buy? And Arthur's like, we don't know. We don't know if we're buying yet. And so then within like a whole weekend, Will set up like open house after open house of seeing all these tour request houses. It was super fast. It was amazing. And we found our house on the second day. So the second day. It was the first house we saw on the second day, and then we went back in the afternoon.
Went back a few days later.
Yeah. We literally walked through it and we looked at each other and we're like,
Yeah.
We're looking to rent, but this is the one. So now we have to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the start of a few months of battle.
Big bonding experience for both of us and with Will.
I had met Will through friends several months before I decided to purchase a home, and he was one of the first people that I thought of when making a decision that I was going to remain in Miami and make it my, at least for now, permanent home. So even my initial questions about the home buying process, he was very patient, answered all of my questions thoroughly. My only requirement was I want to be central to downtown, but I want a place with a yard. I want a house. I miss living in a house. I rescue animals. So I wanted a big yard for my dog, and we found just that. So overall experience came very trusted from a very good friend of mine. And though the experience was a long one, it was a stressful one. I think Eric had mentioned, I don't think you'd expect it to be as emotional as it was. I was being outbid by $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 at the time for homes that were already overvalued to begin with. And it just got to a point where it was like, am I ever going to close on something? Is this not the right time? And of course, looking back, it was the right time because I don't think we'll ever see those interest rates again. But it was a long and grueling process. I think it was offer number 12 was the final. So took a while, to say the least. Having experienced friends that have gone through a similar buying process, I knew that it wouldn't be easy. I just didn't think it would be 12 offers. Will built a very good rapport with the seller's real estate agents. And we toured the property. We knew that it would maybe see some issues with the appraisal process. He built very good rapport. He talked about his love of F1, and I had just purchased the F1 tickets for the first Formula One in Miami. And when we were getting really creative with the negotiation, because ultimately it didn't appraise like we thought it was, Will brought in the F1 tickets as a, hey, well, Tiff's comfortable with selling this as part of the negotiation, and ultimately that closed the deal for us.
And at the time when F1 was sold out that first year, and it was very difficult to find tickets, and the seller's agents accepted the F1 tickets as compensation for lowering their commission on the deal, and it all worked out. I took Tiffany with me on Friday to the racetrack, so she still got to experience Formula One in Miami, and we had a blast. I will always do whatever it takes to figure out a way to close a deal, of course, whether it's F1 tickets, or we have to figure out how to sweeten the deal for the agents, for the sellers, for whoever it might be, in order to just get the deal done. Because what kind of agents are we if we aren't creative in being able to get these deals to the closing table? The
appraisal did come in different than we expected, but not as far off as I think it was the fifth offer, where the appraisal I think was $150,000 off. The house was not what we had thought after doing the inspection, which is why inspections are so important. So it was positive that we didn't get that house and that it did appraise the way that it did, because I think we would have run into issues much later if we had gone through with the process. So at that point, it didn't seem like that much of a gap, and ultimately we were able to get creative with the negotiation. But by the time that I got the physical keys to the property, it was more than surreal. It was like, oh, it's about time.
For me, again, it was about a 4-year process, and I just thank you to Will for just sticking with it, right? Because every week, or seemingly week, I would send him listings. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? I mean, it just dragged on for years. The inventory over the last couple of years has just been zero, right? And so I knew exactly what I wanted, the style, but of course budgets are what they are, right? And so had to remain within sort of the confines of that. And we stretched things a little bit, but we found a way to make it work. But just, the incredible amount of fortitude it took to just, again, stick with it, go through 3 or 4 different proposals, and some of the people were just jerks, right? And it was very obvious that they just were there to mess with you to a degree. Especially some of these builders that maybe they wanted to build, maybe building it for themselves, or building it knowing that they had already sold it and just kept it on the market. But a lot of games being played out there, and Will just, again, stuck with it and helped us find the right home at the right time.
I try to keep all my clients as focused and on path as possible by just telling them, hey, look, we're gonna take things one step at a time. Because when you start to think ahead and you're thinking, oh, well, how are we gonna get to closing? Well, we're not gonna get to closing if we don't deal with the immediate issue that's in front of us right now. A lot of the time it's gonna take them 1, 2, 3 homes that they're gonna lose. The homes that they're gonna look back on and probably think, oh, I wish I would have bought it, and I wish I would have listened to Will. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical standpoint. I'm saying that because it takes a lot of time for clients, especially new clients, to build trust with a realtor, and with good reason, because there's a lot of realtors in South Florida, and granted all over the country, who just do a subpar job.
I remember walking in, and he had all these windows, and it was completely opened up. And I remember looking back at Will and saying, yeah, this is it. This is the one. We're going to buy it. And this is probably the 20th house that we had looked at together. But I just kind of knew, right? And so we put the offer in. They had a number. They weren't going to budge from it, and that was okay. We figured out a way to meet them where they were at, and the negotiation was pretty tough. They were pretty firm in what they thought everything was worth and what they needed to do. We found some things that were unfortunately mold related, and they didn't want to budge. So we just, knowing that this had been such a long process, and eventually you just got to get on with things.
There's a solution for everything. There's mold. Okay, we have a mold guy. If we need to extend the inspection period, we'll do that. Everyone gets freaked out. Oh, our inspection period ends in 2 days. All right, that's fine. So what do we do now? We're gonna extend our inspection period. We're gonna have a professional come out, and we're gonna figure it out.
You talk to everybody, they've found mold somewhere in any state, whether it's California or Michigan or Texas or Florida. You're going to find mold. Everybody has a mold story. And so it's not if you're going to find it, but when you're going to find it. Unfortunately, the builder just was YOLO, we don't care, deal with it. And we just made it work. We we knew what the cost would be to remediate, going in there, and just just made sure that everything was set on the right tracks to get it fixed as soon as possible. This is almost 5,000 square feet, and they found it in one very specific part of the house. We actually ran multiple tests to find this one place, because there were some obvious places within the HVAC that they said, well, the system's maybe overloaded, there's moisture in there, obviously there's gonna be some mold, no big deal, we'll remediate it. Well, they did it, but they didn't. And how they actually found it was they just had some sniffer back in one of the laundry rooms, and there's something's funny with this room, and one of the it's new construction. So one of the actual contractors, people that were doing the work and building this house, said, actually one of the pipes burst in this room. And they were going to stay silent on it, but it was just a side conversation that they had. And again, I have no idea how they found it in one specific small area, but it wasn't a terrible remediation.
So we talked about, we loved the house, built in 1949. We bought it from a family that had bought it for their kids to, they were going to they were going to UM, it was kind of like where they would stay, and then the family would come and stay there in the holidays. But it was fairly vacant. The kid had graduated, I think, in the past year, and for the past year they tried to rent it, never rented, and so it had been vacant. And so the house, hadn't had the correct kind of AC system in place, and so mold eventually grew. And you were very good at being very stern with, no, we need to get as much of as deep of a check as we can have. I think it was the last day of our inspection period. Yeah. And to Eric's point, everyone who Will has put us in touch with has been incredible. And Julian, his mold guy, is nothing short of spectacular. Yeah, he is God's gift to mold inspections. But he came in and he was like, I don't know what gave you the sense, but we found mold pretty much everywhere. Yeah. And it wasn't just, hey, there's a lot of mold, it's naturally occurring. It's like there's black mold, there's mold everywhere.
And our one thing when going through the house buying process, I said, we're not dealing with plumbing, and we're not dealing with mold, and we're not dealing with AC. And we had every single one as a huge issue. And Arthur's like, we have to get this house. I'm like, pull the plug. We're leaving. We're going to find a different one.
I have contractors and vendors for pretty much every issue, whether it's HVAC systems, AC, mold, roofing, plumbing, anything like that. You have to be, in order to be solutions oriented and not be stressed out, if you don't have a system of vendors in place, you can't solve these issues when they come up during inspection period. You can't say, hey, look, let's take it one step at a time. I have a guy for this who can fix this. If you don't have these vendors in place ready to go, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I've had a strong relationship with many of my vendors throughout the years now. They always hook up my clients. They always take all the time that my clients need to talk with them over the phone, over text, whatever day or time of the week. And so I couldn't be happier that I have a team like that behind me ready to help me get these deals closed.
Will and Julian were very good at just sticking to the facts, like, hey, here's what's happened. And they go, I got it, I get it. The sellers were like, hey, we want this house to be right for you. We're gonna go in, we're gonna clean it. And then I'm not sure if they hired the wrong remediation people, or they botched it, or they faked it, or what, but we were like, hey, you're gonna pay for this is also, again, with the negotiation that we'll help with, you're gonna remediate it, but then you're going to check it again, and you're gonna pay for those tests, and you're gonna prove that it's clean. And they did, and it came back, mold was still everywhere. And that's when things got really heated, because they were like, oh, your mold guy is a liar, everything's fake. Yeah. I've done this work on my kids were in here for years. You think I'd have them growing up in a moldy house? And that's what really, the extensions that Tati was talking about, that's where it just kept getting pushed back, because there was so much back and forth. And we eventually got there where on, I think, maybe 2 hours before the official closing, we had a test that said the house was mold free.
The cool thing is it wasn't just about selling the house. He had lined up every contractor that we needed. We closed on a Wednesday. On Thursday, we had 15 contractors here to knock out everything that we needed to knock out, whether it was related to the mold remediation, or electrical, or water, or HVAC. We had everything lined up within the next day, and that was actually all courtesy of Will, right, and his connections, and how just demonstrating how important he is to the whole process, but like what kind of person he is as well.
The mindset for buying a house with me or even selling a house is like super solutions oriented, and maybe that comes from the fact that I suffer from anxiety daily. And so I have to have a system of checks and balances. I have to have a system of solutions. Like I can't think about 3 steps ahead when step 1 and 2 haven't been figured out yet. And I try to pass that on to my clients as well, because again, it can be very emotional. And I always ask people, when we're confronted with big situations like that, the number one question I always ask them is, do you want the house? It's a legitimate question. People might be under contract and they might say, I don't really want the house, or I don't want the house enough to want to deal with these issues. And some people might get involved in a house that has so many issues. Like Arthur and Tatiana, for instance, that house had a lot of issues during the inspection period. But I asked them, do you want the house? And of course they said, well, yeah, we really want the house. And I said, okay, then we're gonna figure it out, and this is what we have to do.
And he said, try to take some emotion out of the house. Do you want it, yes or no? Because we can walk away from this thing at any time. There's enough here where you can walk away, no harm, no foul, but go find the next house. And I said, you know what? We know what this is gonna cost. We ran some numbers, pulled together a quick budget. It's like, not a big deal. Let's go forward. Let's just stop worrying about some small stuff. That's not gonna kill the deal, and let's just move forward. This is a very emotional process. And so like, you have to kind of temper your emotions, otherwise you make a bad decision. And so that was actually one thing that Will helped out tremendously. It was like making sure that you weren't underestimating something or overestimating something based on your emotions. He takes the emotion right out of it. He sees things black and white, which helps out quite a bit.
Even though we had hiccup after hiccup after hiccup of whether it was AC, mold, anything like that, even towards like, you know, past our 75-day plus close of like extensions and extensions, Will was like, I'm still here for you. Like, if this isn't what you want to do, we can walk away right now. So even though his time and energy was invested as well as ours, he was like, if this isn't for you, we do it again.
You know, we're very emotional. We're from California. We're seeing all this mold in Miami. We're like, oh my God, what is this place? Like, and he was very black and white for explaining, you know, listen, pretty much everywhere in the Gables has it. I'm sure you probably actually grew up in a house that had mold. Eventually called my dad. He was right. Like, and so you have this like mold is the boogeyman, and you know, it took Will, I think 3 or 4 times of us being like, this is mold, like we're not buying this house. And he was just like, listen, you're gonna find this everywhere.
He's like, it's outside on the trees. And we're like, what is this place? This is tropical humid.
Is the house structurally sound? But he was just so good at kind of tempering our emotions when we really needed it, because it also didn't help that the buyer and us were pretty contentious on a number of things. And you know, taking the human emotions out of it and him being just so kind of matter of fact was so helpful for us.
I think I know. The best thing that I do to try to keep everyone kind of logical in the moment, and this doesn't really work for everyone, if anyone starts to get emotional, you have to make sure not to be emotional back, because 2 people who are emotional is just going to be a train wreck and a disaster. And you're used to dealing with people just calling you names in this industry at this point, because if you as a realtor put your ego first, it's only going to hurt the deal for your client. And whenever I start getting name called, for instance, you know, with many of these deals from Eric and Arthur and Tatiana, I simply tell them, what would you like me to do about it? And 9 times out of 10, they don't know what to say, because I've asked them, what solution can you provide to this situation, instead of just screaming and yelling, and 9 times out of 10, they don't know what to say. And that ends the conversation right then and there. And it's an emotion checker, and it makes everyone realize that they're just screaming at nonsense at this point and that we're not actually finding a solution. Real estate is a very emotional process. You're selling people's homes who have maybe been in there for 30 years, 40 years, even 50 sometimes. The moment that you realize that you're dealing with someone's memories when you're selling a house as well, is the moment you can kind of change your tune a little bit and try to be more understanding of the situation, and then you can get deals done easier.
I feel like Will, I don't know if it's just with you guys, but he is freaky fast with his texting.
Oh yeah.
They're paragraphs.
Yeah.
You send him a text or a question and he immediately responds, so.
I love that my guy's up at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about him sleeping in. Somebody's on Miami time. No, he's on Will time, which is like, it works for me.
I have kids now, and I'm up at like 5, 4, 3. I send texts, and within the hour, it's like text right back. It's honestly pretty impressive.
It's customer service. You know, texting fast in our industry is something that I think is important, because these are very big purchases, and people might be buying their first home, or they might be upgrading to a $10 million home. And no matter how much money you have, like buying a $10 million home is a lot of money. And if you don't have a lot of money, even buying $400,000 is a lot of money, depending on the person. It's subjective. These are anxiety-inducing transactions, and people want to know that they're being cared for on a 24/7 basis.
Any sort of questions I had for Will immediately got responded to. I feel like that, similar to Eric's experience and everybody else's, he really gives you things black and white. And I kind of got to see Will, not just with closing on the house, but he actually, one point, leased my house and rented it out. He actually sold that same house as well. So I kind of got to see him for pretty much the entire cycle of owning, leasing, and selling a single family home. So, pretty much throughout all of that, there was ups and downs for sure, whether it was dealing with the seller from the get-go, dealing with, 20 different prospects for getting a lease the right way that we needed, and, several tenants that may or may not have met like the security deposit or different requirements that we had. It was, just a lot of ups and downs, and he was pretty much there throughout the entire process on a day-to-day basis for any sort of questions I had, which I thought was great. Just his responsiveness, I think, is second to none with, even just texting a friend. I feel like it's different. So the responsiveness to me is what goes that extra mile for me, because, there's realtors here and there that I've dealt with in the past who, sometimes take days before responding to you. And I feel like that, time kills deals is the way I like to say it. And kind of feel like he has that more niche sort of expertise, which I think is huge. So between that, expertise and responsiveness, both of those together to me is kind of what goes that extra mile.
Yeah, going off what Eddie said, being super responsive is of the utmost importance to me, because time does kill deals. There's been countless times where if you wait too long for a client to sign a contract or something, that's not your fault as a realtor, but time kills deals. They could accept another offer, and then you end up losing the house that you really wanted. So I have to make sure that I answer all of my clients' questions as soon as possible.
As a single woman, I didn't want to deal with a construction project. So I was looking for something very, very specific in my first home, which, though it took a long time, and I knew it would take a long time, I just didn't think it would take 12 offers. But that was the market at the time, and he did set expectations, like we could put this on pause if you need to put it on pause. And even during the negotiations with the house that I'm in now, it did get, I wouldn't say heated. It was a unique process. We were negotiating the commission of the seller's real estate agents. They said, well, we will forego our commission if you give us your F1 tickets for the weekend, which was the first F1 in Miami. Tickets, I think, were around $1,200. And Will calls me and says, this is the last offer. Like, if you're willing to do this, we can close it. So Will was nice enough. He said, listen, if you give your tickets, I'll buy you a Saturday seat. So I had a nice VIP seat next to Will in his cowboy boots.
So yeah, it was Saturday that I took Tiffany, not Friday, to the race. Saturday is a pretty big day for Formula One. Like she mentioned during her interview, we basically saw probably 15 different houses, tried submitting offers on 3 or 4 of them, had been under contract on another house. So this was an emotional roller coaster, not just for her, but also for me, because you hate to see your friends go through the struggle of buying a house. It wasn't just her, it was many of my friends at that time, having to tell them, hey, you have your down payment on the house, but you're gonna have to also pay an extra 5 or 10% on top in cash. That's not immediate equity in your house. And that's a tough thing to explain to anyone when especially if they're like a first-time home buyer. So I was super happy at how well Tiffany handled the situation, how we handled it together, and that we're still friends today. No matter how rocky that home buying process was for her. And I'll always appreciate her for sticking it out with me and trusting me.
So many different ways has he gone the extra mile, but I'll give you just like one specific example, right? Even just yesterday, it's his new home. I didn't own a single piece of furniture. I've got 5,000 square feet to fill. There's constant deliveries, and I travel for work every single week. So I was like, hey man, would you mind swinging by and helping me out with some deliveries? And he was here to do it. The guy's amazing, he does it all. But no, joking aside, it's not transactional for him, right? He's always said this from the beginning. It's all about long-term relationships, and he not only lives his life that way, but it's both personal and professional for him. And it's obvious with his friends that he has. There's probably hundreds of them. And working with him it's honestly been a blessing. And the reason why I was so eager to come back here is he's one of the biggest reasons, for sure.
We had a similar situation. We flew back home and we had these couches delivered.
All at different times.
Yeah,
different
all
packages,
for whatever reason,
different.
4 of them came at one point, and then 4 hours later, and I already had to go get to my flight, so I had to leave, and the other last 2 sections showed up last second, so I was like, well, I'm so sorry. Like, I know it's Coral Gables, you're in, where are you right now? Are you by chance close? He's like, I'm in Brickell, but like, tell me what you want, I'm gonna go do it. I was like, okay, like, can you please, keys in this lockbox, like, can you move these couches inside? He goes in, and I forgot that we had set the alarm system on. And so I get through security and I've got like 4 texts from Will, 3 calls. I've got like, all right, cops are on the way. Like, hey, please turn off your security camera. And then he's like, hey man, I really think I accidentally broke into your house or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I called our security provider. I was like, hey, no, it's totally fine. Cancel the cops. Like, it's all good.
It's so funny because he's like, I'm in my workout gear. I actually forgot my ID, so I am breaking into your house. I don't even know what I'm going to tell the police when they get here.
Yeah, that was funny, and again, it goes back to being able to always respond to your clients. Being a realtor is more than just getting a deal done, going through an inspection period and appraisal, and that's it. You need to be solutions oriented, you need to be solutions driven, and you also need to be willing to help out your clients at any specific time as if they were your friends. And for any friend who ever calls me and says they need something done for them, I'm obviously going to answer and I'm going to help them. So my clients are just like my friends, and my friends are my clients. So that was I was more than happy to help Arthur on a last second's notice and almost probably get arrested for it, since he wasn't answering my calls to turn off his alarm that was going off.
I think one of the more unique parts of the home buying process that I'll remember is I'd walk in with Will and they would assume that I was his girlfriend. And they would speak to him as if he was making the decisions. And I remember Will in his little booty shorts and cowboy boots would go, she's the boss lady over here. It was a humorous situation, and no one had assumed me walking in that I was the buyer whatsoever, which I feel like is salesperson 101. Know who the buyer is walking in. They assumed it was Will, which I think made it even more hilarious given his outfit and attire. And it was that humor that made me feel better about the process, because I did feel a little bit disregarded by some of the seller real estate agents just because of that slight interaction. So I definitely appreciated his the way he handled those particular situations.
Yeah, so going back to my relationship with Tiffany, she's a rock star, and it was always hilarious to go to all these showings with her. And it's sad because this happens with a lot of female clients that I actually go to showings with. They always think that the man is the one in charge. It even happens with female agents. I have so many showings where the female agents directly talk to the man. They actually don't even talk to the woman, and it's super sad, and it's a little discouraging as a woman to not be appreciated and to kind of just be disregarded. So I always made sure the moment that any agent started talking directly to me and was ignoring Tiffany, I immediately just made sure to take a step back and say, hey, she's the one buying the house, not me. Please focus and talk to her. That's just the respect that any woman deserves, especially when you're a single female buying a home. Like that's it's pretty awesome if you can afford a house in Miami, and it's pretty kick-ass to buy a house in Miami as a single person. Not many people can do that, and Tiffany's one of them. So I'll always respect and appreciate her for that.
Just picking back on your outfit story, it's actually funny because in any sort of social event, I'm always looking forward to what is Will going to wear. Every single time. I mean, it's always something that, just kind of blows your mind a little. but in the best of ways.
Oh gosh, just patience. I think that you can only get so far online, and there's all kinds of resources that you can look at, but at the end of the day, you really need to work with somebody that's a true professional and not just a hack, knows the area. I think Eddie was talking about it earlier, like the price per square foot, whether it's for rent or buy, varies dramatically across, South Florida. So I think just understanding those submarkets is incredibly important. I think I mentioned this earlier, it's like knowing where to play may not necessarily be where you want to live, right? And so there's an unbelievable amount of fun here. And just tempering your expectations and kind of knowing what your strengths and what your weaknesses are probably a pretty important thing for a lot of men out there.
I think probably I would say to keep an open mind, especially going back to that. There's so many little neighborhoods and small little places within Miami that if you're not from here, you didn't grow up here, I think that's why choosing the right agent is probably the most important decision you'll make. Will is incredibly knowledgeable about every street. He goes, I know a guy that lives on this street. I know somebody that grew up on this street. He knows everything. Like, he's the messiah of Miami at this point. And like, even after buying the house, and he is helping us sell our condo in Brickell, Will's not just our agent, Will's our friend. So like, I don't look at Will as just our real estate agent. I can text him on the side and be like, hi, I need help looking for this. I need a recommendation for this. And Will is always gonna be there. So I would say it's definitely who you're trusting with your time and your energy.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that, from California, it's very different that they come here and, the Coral Gables or, everyone thinks that Miami everywhere is South Beach. Like everything is like South Beach. And, it's how do people live here? And people come to Coral Gables, they go to Coconut Grove or just the difference in neighborhoods. But, it's truly almost like Manhattan and Brickell. I mean, it's a really functioning city that has so many different areas. That has pretty much everything that people are looking for. So as long as you keep an open mind, you'll find what you're looking for.
I think for me, having toured so many houses, there was a lot of shoddy construction, things that are poorly built. I think they'd mentioned the situation with the mold not even being a legitimate inspector. You run into more of that than I think you might think in Miami. So having someone who has a trusted network of inspectors, builders, contractors is very valuable because whoever Will recommends, you can trust.
I lived in Miami my entire life, and again, there's a lot of either shady sellers or shady, just people in general that you're dealing with, and Will knows how to look right through it and really tell his clients how to best act a certain way. And what's great about him is he kind of likes to get what are like your top 3 priorities for buying a house, and what are you guys like mostly looking for? Is it neighborhood? Is it the different specs that are within your house? Is it X, Y, and Z? Is it price? He kind of looks at different real estate like that, taking your best interest at heart, which I think, there's some realtors out there that really only want to, get a deal closed and move on to the next one and deal with the next person. But I think he really values those relationships that he builds. He looks at the long term. He's there with you, not just for your first home, could be there with you for your 10th home. So having somebody like that who knows the market, knows the people down here, and knows where to look is, I think, something that's great and what separates him from a lot of different realtors and brokers out there.
I try to maintain all of my relationships with my clients. I think I stay in touch with 99% of my clients, specifically clients like Eddie, Tatiana, Arthur, Eric. I've been friends with them. I've been friends with Eddie for 15 years, Eric for 6 years, Tatiana and Arthur now for almost a year. I like staying friends with all of them because I genuinely like the people that I work with. I love introducing all my clients to each other because you never know which client is going to be able to help someone else. And I think that's how we all get to the top in life, is saying, hey, I have someone here who can help you excel in life, who can help you with this business, who can help you with this aspect of your business. So if I can just help one friend excel in their life, whether it's financially, emotionally, or whatever have you, I'm super happy to do that and connect them to other people. If I can connect people that are gonna help each other succeed, that's my main goal.